share in my song. All my sorrows, all my merriment, join in music to set hearts aflame. Father, now that I wander with thee, flowers and fields are alive with thy joy. All that I own to thee I give, and now I sing in thy love I am free. Father, now that I dance in thy name, birds and animals share in my song. All my sorrows, all my merriment, join in music to set hearts aflame. All my sorrows, all my merriment, join in music to set hearts aflame.
And it's week 13, deeds versus intention. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. Jesus Christ emphasized repeatedly the spirit, not the letter of the law. In chapter 5 of the Gospel of St. Matthew, he speaks of the sin of killing and the legal punishment attendant of that sin, but says that more important, the desire to kill or to do harm. He shows that the sin of harmful desire goes beyond mere wanting to kill. My message to you, he said, is this: whoever is angry with his brother without cause already stands condemned. Whoever contemptuously calls his brother a fool shall answer for it to the Supreme Council. And whoever calls his brother an outcast of God shall be in danger of hellfire. Brother here means any human being. For all of us in the highest sense are brothers and sisters, children of our one Father, Mother, God. The true self of one is the self of all. To hurt another is, even one who doesn't realize it, is to hurt himself. Swami Kriya-yoga in the Path recalls an episode in which the master, Paramhansa Yogananda, revealed his sense of identity even with the plants. One day, Kriya-yoga wrote, we were moving a delicate but rather heavy tropical plant into position on the hillside. Our handling evidently was too rough, for Master cried out, "Be careful! What are you doing? Can't you feel it's alive?" To wish death to anyone, to wish even harm to any creature, is to deny in oneself the reality of that divine light, which all of us are manifestations. It is, in short, to deny the eternal truth proclaimed by the Bhagavad Gita in the 2nd chapter. This self is never born, nor does it perish. Only existing, it cannot even cease to be. It is birthless, eternal, changeless, ever itself. It is not slain when the holy body is slain. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
Hello, friends. It's a joy to be here this morning, sharing in our Guru's teachings. When Yogananda was a boy, he sat down one day to meditate, and he asked himself the question, what is behind the darkness of closed eyes? And as he pondered this question, a great light appeared before his inner vision, and slowly that light formed into the shapes of meditating saints. And Yogananda asked out loud, "Who are you?" And they answered, "We are the Himalayan yogis." And Yogananda felt a great power in these souls. He saw God's light shining through their lives. He was deeply moved, deeply inspired. And he said, "I want to be like you. I want to go to the Himalayas." And as it turns out, Yogananda would not need to live in the Himalayas to realize his oneness with God. But even at that young age, he set for himself the highest intention, the highest aspiration, that he would realize his oneness with God and that he would share that presence with all souls, with everyone. We often sing the chant, "I want only thee." And we might think we're being insincere when we sing this chant, but it's a great affirmation nonetheless. But we may think, well, I want thee, Lord, but I'd also like a beautiful home, or a good job, or a loving partner, or maybe even a car, or good health. But when we seek God first and foremost, when we completely give our lives to Him, then He will take care of all the rest. He will give us whatever we need, and sometimes He even gives us the things we want. But God and Guru know better than we do what will serve us best. They know what we need. They can see where we've been, and they know where we're going. And they will guide us perfectly. They will give us those things that help us in our spiritual search, and not those that will hinder our way. And so we need to learn to trust in that. Yogananda told the story often of a man who was very ill. He had diabetes. He had sores all over his body. And the doctors gave him some 3 months to live. And he said, however long I have left, I will see God. And he sat down to meditate. And at first, he could only meditate for about 15 minutes at a time. Due to his illness, he would have to get up and relieve himself. But over time, he found that he could meditate for longer and longer periods. And he found himself going more and more deeply into that light, into the inner spirit. And soon, those 3 months that he was given to live came and went. And still he was alive, still he was meditating, still he was seeking God. And then a year passed, and then another and another. And then one day he went into a state of ecstasy. He was deep in yogic joy. He was in samadhi. And he remained in that state for quite some time. And when he came back to awareness of the world, he saw that his body had been absolutely healed. And he said, Lord, I didn't ask you to heal my body. I only asked you to come to me. And the Lord said, where my light is, there can be no darkness. Sometimes that light heals the body. Always, if we live more and more in that light, if we express it through our lives, it will heal our hearts, heal our minds. And it frees us from the pull of lower urges. It frees us from the vrittis and the chakras that make us want to do things that aren't in our best interest. It uplifts us and gives us the opportunity to begin to align our deeds, our outer actions, with our highest aspirations. So how do we awaken that light? How do we commune with that light? Yogananda said, By deeper, longer, thirsty, guru-given meditation comes the celestial samadhi. We need to meditate more and more deeply. He once said, every meditation should be deeper than the last one. A very, very tall order, and something I have not been able to accomplish in my life. But I think the important thing that Yogananda is saying is that we don't want to be satisfied with the status quo. We don't want to be satisfied with whatever we did last year. We want to, over the years, to be moving in the right direction, to meditate more and more deeply, and perhaps, if our outer circumstances allow it, maybe to choose to meditate a little longer, each year. And we don't want to forget the thirsty, guru-given meditation part of what Yogananda said. Each year, as we go through life, we want to deepen our devotion, deepen our longing to know God, and we want to deepen our attunement with the Guru so that he can enter our lives and transform us. Yogananda said that to awaken that light, we should, when we meditate, gaze into the spiritual eye. He said that would awaken that light and create a magnetism there where we can commune with that light. He also said that when he was a young man in his guru's ashram, that he would sometimes hold his gaze at the spiritual eye and focus there intently for whole days at a time, or even for several days. He said he would do this even in mundane activities. And he said at first it was awkward, but he started to get used to it, and he found that he had great spiritual awakening through this process. And I remember I heard about this when I was much younger than I am now, when I was fairly new on the spiritual path, and I thought, I want to give this a try. And I used to like to walk around a lake in Seattle called Green Lake. It's a little less than 3 miles around. And so I decided I would try this as I walked around the lake. And so I drove to the lake, got out of my car, started walking. I lifted my gaze to the spiritual eye, tried to concentrate there as deeply as I could. And indeed, at first, it did feel awkward. Felt like I might trip or bump into someone. But as I walked, I became more comfortable with it. And I realized that with my peripheral vision, I could see enough to stay out of trouble. And as I walked, I did indeed feel uplifted. I felt a sense of lightness kind of overcome me, an expansion of consciousness. And I felt more joy. And as I gazed through the spiritual eye, off into the distance, I could see the tops of all the trees around the lake. And it was a very beautiful day, just by coincidence. And it was sunny, but not too hot, and there was a light breeze. And as I gazed through the spiritual eye at the tops of the trees, they seemed to be shimmering with light, and it was very astral. And I remember wondering, is this because of the awakened light from this practice, or is it just because the weather is just perfect for the sun to shine on the trees and the breeze is moving them? Perhaps it was a little of both, but I felt very, very uplifted. And I walked all the way around the lake. And then I thought, okay, this was a very good experiment. I felt very uplifted. But I thought, I better drop my gaze to a normal gaze before I get ready to go get in my car and drive. It wouldn't be safe to drive like that. I don't think Yogananda would have drove like that. And so I dropped my gaze, and as I took a few steps, I passed somebody. And just for the briefest moment, our eyes met. And he said, hello. And I said hello back to him. And I thought, this is kind of interesting because it was a beautiful day. There probably were 200 or 300 people walking around Green Lake. And generally, strangers don't say hello to each other when there's that many people because there's just too many people to greet. And I felt intuitively that he was responding to that awakened light within me, that it had something to do with that spiritual practice. And this has something to say to all of us. When we begin to live more in that light, to express it through everything we do, then not only are we uplifted and blessed by that light, but also we are able to offer the blessings and upliftment of that light to everyone around us, to our loved ones, to our families, to our friends, and perhaps even to a stranger who's walking around Green Lake. The world truly needs this light at this time. It needs all the light it can get. If you tune into the news, you no doubt will think we're living in difficult times. And to a certain degree, it is true. But all times have their difficulties. This is how God guides us to seek our happiness within, to seek our happiness in Him rather than in the things of the world. So Yogananda himself lived through very difficult times. He lived through a pandemic worse than the one we just went through. He lived through 2 world wars and through a depression. And through all of that, he was a beacon of light. He was always in God's presence, and he was sharing that presence with the world. And we also have an opportunity to set for ourselves that highest aspiration, the aspiration to commune with that light, to become one with that light, and to share it with all souls everywhere. Yogananda, during World War I, went to the movies. I'm assuming the movie would have been a silent movie, and they played a newsreel, and it showed some very horrible scenes from the war in Europe. And he kind of cried out inwardly, "Divine Mother, why does this have to be like this?" And shortly after that, an interesting thing happened. Now, last week, right here on this dais, Erin was doing Sunday service, and she mentioned this story, but I'm also going to flesh it out a little more because it speaks to our topic. But Yogananda, shortly after that experience at the movies, was in his meditation room, in his attic meditation room, and he was meditating. And suddenly his consciousness was shifted to the captain of a ship. And this ship was in the midst of a great battle. And suddenly a shell hit the ammunition locker on the ship, and there was a great explosion, and the ship was torn apart. And men were diving into the water, swimming for the shore. The shore was some distance off. They wouldn't all make it. And Yogananda / this captain also dove into the water and swam madly for the shore. And sure enough, he made it to the shore, and he stood up, and he was congratulating himself on having not drowned when he was hit by a bullet. And so he drops to the ground, and he cries out in great anguish because he knows he is dying. And then suddenly, Yogananda's consciousness was shifted back to his body in the little meditation room. And now he grabbed his body and clutched it with great joy, knowing that he was alive and well, that his body was whole. But then once again, his consciousness gets shifted to the dying man on the beach. And he cries out, "Divine Mother, am I alive and well in my meditation room, or am I dying on this beach?" And Divine Mother said, "What has life or death to do with light? What has life or death to do with light? We are not these bodies. We are not these personalities. We are that eternal light. That light cannot die. It cannot be injured. It cannot suffer. If we want to overcome all pain and suffering in our lives, we need to shift our sense and our understanding on the deepest level of who we are from this physical body to that light, to spirit, to pure consciousness." And so I invite everyone, everyone's here because they're already doing this, but even to a greater level, I invite you to set for yourself that highest intention, that highest aspiration, to realize your oneness with that light. And as we do this, and as we're steadfast, our outer activities, our deeds, will almost automatically start to align themselves with that highest goal. Sure, we have to put out energy and do things to make those changes, but that change will come if we hold that very intense desire to know God. So let us seek that oneness with that light. And in time, like these great gurus behind me, we will all be beacons of light in this world, sharing that presence with all souls. God bless you.
I wanted to begin today's talk with just a little bit about the intention of the Ananda community. And we're all experiencing it here every time we come to Sunday service, but we also live in that light. We live in the community with other like souls. And this past week, in one of our slot songs, we actually were given the opportunity to talk with each other about what our friendships mean to us and what this community means. And it was really profound because we spent a lot of time talking with each other about trust and surrender and not really knowing how we got here, but that we were led either through a prayer or through our yearning for God's presence. And a thought came to me. I was raised in a real Christian family, so often these quotes come to me and I'm like, I don't remember the whole thing. So this one was that way, and I looked it up and found it. But my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts your thoughts. So we're guided by that infinite consciousness, but we have to raise our energy to match that. And through our inspiration and our intentions, through here in this community, we are so blessed to have other like-minded souls to lift us up when we're feeling a little down or what we're experiencing in our lives. We have this aura of light all around us. Suryadas asked me to tell this little story. I hadn't really thought about it, but we had a friend in the Ananda community in Seattle where we lived for like some 25 years. And he had been suffering from, I just forgot. I forgot. Anyway, we were praying for him, and he was very, very sick. He hadn't gone to the hospital yet, but he was very, very ill, hepatitis. And I had brought this back into my classroom with children. I was at that time teaching really young kids. They were only 3 and 4. And we decided that we would pray for him every day. And in the meantime, I brought a plant into the classroom. And this little plant was in a little tiny, one of those little tiny cups, and it was falling over, and it just, it needed to be repotted, but it had some character. It was a rubber plant. And so I took it as an assignment that it was our science project. And every week we'd measure how tall it got. We'd measure the light that it got. We measured how long how many days it had been since it needed water. So how many days did it need water? It was this whole science experiment. And then I said, well, this plant needs a name. And one of the boys said, let's name it Robert. And that was the gentleman that we were praying for. I said, oh, what a great idea. Let's name it Robert. So his name was Robert. And each year I had this classroom, the school for 17 years. So this plant got really big. I actually wanted to bring it here to Sacramento, but it was so big we couldn't fit it in a truck. But anyway, the love that we felt for this plant grew and grew. And it was really odd. One day I was describing this to one of the parents that was coming on a tour. And I said, oh, this is Robert, the plant, Robert Plant. And we all just like cracked up because I had no intention of that, but it just so happened that that was what it was. And for those of you who don't know who Robert Plant is, he's a rock star and sings music. So it was quite comical, and it really caught a lot of attention to parents, actually. But the God's wisdoms and plans, I mean, our friend Robert did heal himself, and through many, many prayers. But we had to raise our thoughts and our consciousness because God was guiding us in that moment. We really didn't know, but if you listen in, like I listen into the children, they can really guide our consciousness. The next story I wanted to tell is about Bachi, and he is a young boy in India, one of these Indian stories. And he lived in a village with his family, and they had a saint, Babu Santush Das, that lived outside the city. And this saint was someone that they visited and was nourished by his teachings. And Bashu had been assigned to an outside village for a new job. So he went to his saint and said, I come here, he was bowing, and I come here for your blessing. And the saint said, he was a little saddened, but he said, farewell, my son, I wish you well. And he got up and moved. Well, short time, it had been a year actually, his friends came running into Santosh and said, did you hear about Bachu? And he's like, no, why? What happened? He said, he's gotten tangled up with some other young folks, and they're stealing for their, instead of working, they're stealing from others. And he was saddened by that. He said, Bachu is such a deep soul. It's such a sweet man, or boy. And so the next week, it just so happened, Bachu came home to visit his parents, and as is custom, to go to the saint and to receive his blessings, and he did. And the saint said to Bachu, Bachu, how's your job going? And he said, well, I got a different job. I just was so bored with that one. I got some new friends, and I've got a new job now. And he says, really? I'd like to come to your home and visit you. And he says, oh, I would be so honored. I would be so blessed if you came to visit me. And so they parted, and Bachu was thinking about this. And that afternoon, when he got home, his friends gathered around and said, we're going to go to the new marketplace that just opened this spring. And we want you to come with us because there's there'll be a lot of people there that we can steal from. And Bachu says, okay, fine, let's go. So they're watching this new man that they had never seen before, and they're going in and out of stalls and watching him, and they thought, oh, as soon as he brings out his purse of money, we'll just run up and grab it and run. So they had this plan, and Bachu was watching, and he got closer and closer and started to run up, and he thought, maybe this is Baba. Maybe Baba has changed his form. Maybe this really isn't this man. And so he gets cowardly and stands behind the stall and can't do anything. And in the meantime, later in the afternoon, his friends, oh, hey, Baba, what did you get today? Well, how was your earnings? And he said, oh, well, there was a policeman, and I didn't dare try to steal anything today. And there was the time where his friends were kind of ignoring him because they were just counting their money, and Bachu was, in that moment, they had decided to move on, and there was a gentleman that was carrying a big bag of mangoes. And he was struggling, and they were falling out, and they were every which way. And Bachi thought in a moment, is this Baba? Is this Baba here? He said he would come to visit me, and he could take any form he wanted. Is this him? And anyway, in the meantime, he went up and started picking up the mangoes and helping him, because he said, you know, Bachu always taught me to be kind and helpful to the less fortunate than me. And so he picked up the mangoes and put them in the bag and put them in his sack. And at that moment, everything changed for him. He saw Baba everywhere. He saw him in the plants. He saw him in the trees. He saw him behind people's faces. And he knew God was everywhere. He knew he had changed heart. And he went home that evening and decided no more. And he gave up that life and then began to live a more predominant life in the village and became one of the leaders there. But how is this intention, how can we understand our intention? He found within himself his intention of living the right life. But how can we do these same things in our lives? And what are our intentions? Well, one of the things is self-study. We have to learn to look at our lives, look at our reactions to things, and really be aware of how we are reacting. Also, I heard just recently, you know, if you begin to journal, it's like another set of consciousness comes in. I know I've journaled for many years, but during that self-study, you don't even know, but it uplifts you into another realm. And you begin to see yourself in a different way. You begin to stand back and see yourself as Bachi did. And then, of course, listening to the guru is having a guru. When the disciple is ready, the guru comes. And when we have our mind ever focused on thee, God, 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 he's guiding us all the time. And that reflection of our actions, our reflection of our daily actions and how they match our intentions. Just like Swami, he always stayed very positive, solution-oriented. You know, he was always positive when things looked grim. He held that out for all of these new disciples that were coming to Ananda. And we too have that. We're here because of that intention and visualizing our intentions. So if things aren't going exactly how you want, you sit and you visualize exactly what you want and visualize the interactions of other people and how it can lift you up. And then that calm detachment, that solution consciousness, that intuition sets in. All of those things that Bachi finally realized. And we too can have that just by our actions and by ultimately our goals. May we all live in that presence of God in every moment. Joy to you.
I'm going to sing a song for you now by Swami Kriyananda entitled Memories. And this is from his personal album entitled Some of My Favorites. Swami says the message of this song is to express divine melancholy, and that sooner or later we come to the realization that the thing we're seeking is not to be found in this world, that the truth we're seeking and the joy we're seeking is inside. My personal feeling about the song is that there is hope. We will get there, which is expressed by the last two chords of the song. Evening garden, silent fountain, glimmering stars in its depths, a sudden leaf falling toward the water, ripples bring memories. Sunshine, laughter, young folk dreaming of a world they would mold. Each girl a fair muse, each boy a hero. Ripples bring memories. Friend, all our lives we spend seeking the stars, thinking them almost at hand. How far must we roam ere our minds turn within, ere we at last understand? Twilight, mist falls, oh, folk linger, dream what they might have done. Youth's shining star has become an ember, ripples bring memories.